Hello boys and girls, here is Marcin Staniszewski with yet another episode of Little Modular. And in today's episode we will be looking at this beautifully designed Batumi module by Polish company called Chaos Devices. And we will be reviewing this module alongside with the PuTTY extension, and trust me, you want that module also if you are considering buying Batumi, and I will tell you why later on. So what do we have here? This is a Quadruple Lfo. You get 4 Lfos that are packed in one module. And what I really like about this module is that it's really user-friendly. It's easy. It's intuitive, as you can see at the layout and of the interface, design of it. It's really streamlined, it's slim, not taking a lot of place. It's 10 HP plus 3 HP for the PuTTY. And everything is clearly laid out, and you don't need even to read manual, to be honest, unless you want to dive into some more advanced features, which this module has. So it's packed with lots of features, but it's easy to use. So it's my favorite kind of modules. As you can see, we have 4 channels of Lfos. Each channel is represented by a fader and alongside with the inputs and outputs below. So if we take a look in here, each fader has a built-in LED that cycles in time with the oscillations. So it's really easy to see what's happening with each of the Lfos. Then we have inputs. First rows, 2 inputs. The first inputs right here are meant for modulation. So you can modulate each Lfo cycles with external CV modulation, with external CV signal. The second row is meant for synchronizing the Lfos and for resetting the Lfos. You choose whether you want to reset or synchronize the Lfos with this switch right here at the PuTTY. In the upper position, you will reset the Lfo each time it receives a trigger at this input. With the sync switch positioned down, you will sync the Lfo each time it receives a gate or clock. Then the remaining 3 rows are responsible for what this module is all about. So for Lfos, it spits out 3 Lfos simultaneously. The first one is a sine Lfo, the second one is a saw wave Lfo, but it's not as simple as you might think, because the saw signal, you can change its form with these switches right here. So for example, in this position you get a ramp up, in this position you get a ramp down, and with this position you get a triangle, and with this position you get a trapezoid wave. So many nice LFO shapes right there. And last but not least is this square wave that comes out of the last third output of this LFO. So this is a quad LFO, and it also has 4 modes of operating. You switch the operating modes with this button right here in the middle of the interface. And the first one, which is signaled by the red LED right here, is a free LFO. And as you can imagine by the name, it makes each of the Lfos work independently, so they do not sync with each other and they can be used totally independently. Now, before I go to the second mode, let me tell you about the little patch I prepared here, so you can hear what's the whole deal about. I got 3 audio sources here. The first one is taken from IntelliJ Rubicon, and I have the 1 volt per octave input that is modulated by the second LFO right here. Then the second audio source is a Make Noise DPO that goes through this beautifully designed black hole module by Erika Synths. This is a multi-effect that is not released yet, but trust me, you will want to check that out, and I will be talking about this module in the next installment of our series. So DPO is going through this, and the third LFO is modulating the dry wet input CV, so you can hear exactly it's dry and wet with some nice reverb algorithm set up on the black hole. And the third source is taken from IntelliJ shapeshifter oscillator that is going through a Borg filter, and the Borg filter has the cutoff frequency modulated by the last LFO. All the three modules, three audio sources are triggered by Dubtronics Triggerman in sync. So currently what you hear are all those three audio sources modulated independently in the free mode, so there is no correlation between them. Okay, this is how it works and how it sounds. Now the fun begins when we switch to the Quadrature mode. In this mode, the first LFO becomes a master LFO, and the remaining three LFOs get the same speed as the first LFO, but they start in different phase. What it means, each of the LFOs is offset by 90 degrees. So if the first LFO starts at 0, for example, you have the sine wave, then the next one starts 90 degrees later, and the third one 90 degrees later, and so on and so on. So you can get those nice sweeping effects in this mode. For example, you can hear it right here. I can slow it down a bit so it's more prominent. See, it's kind of sequencing effects right now and different cutoff frequencies. Now the third mode, called phase mode, is similar to the Quadrature mode, with the difference being that the remaining three LFOs, LFO 2, 3 and 4, do not have the phase, the arbitrary phase shift, meaning you can set the point at which each LFO starts manually, so it's not arbitrary, which could give you some really unpredictable, interesting results as well. And the fourth one is called divide, and this module is also similar in the matter that the three LFOs are also synced to the first one, but not in the phase way. More they serve as a, for example, kind of like a clock divider. So if LFO number 1 goes fast, then you divide the speed of the first LFO with the fader of each LFO, for example. So it goes twice as slow, now divided by 3, by 4, and so on and so on. It's really interesting and it's really useful in all kinds of percussive and rhythmical patches. So these are all synced. Speaking of synchronization, as I mentioned before, if you would like to synchronize this LFO to your other patch, you can, as I do right now, plug in external clock to the synchronization input right there. So right now I have the first LFO that is slaved to external clock, and all the remaining three LFOs are slaved to the first LFO. So we have the whole patch right now synced, and of course the switch right here, as I mentioned before, it has to be switched to the lower position. So this sync input serves as a synchronization, not reset input. But the real fun starts when we start to modulate each of the LFOs. Now, what we could do is, of course, we could take an external signal and plug it in the modulation slots. But it would be more fun if we would take the signal out of the LFO itself and cross-modulate each LFO with another one, so we can raise a little hell. For example, if you allow me to just search for a patch cable, for example, let me take the square LFO out of channel number 4 and plug it into the modulation slot of LFO number 1. Then I'll take, you can hear immediately that some funky stuff is going on right here. Now let's take the saw wave out of the 3rd channel and plug it into the modulation input of the 4th channel. Bam! Now let me take the sine wave out of this 3rd LFO and plug it into the 2nd modulation slot, and just for the sake of fun, let's take the square LFO out of the 1st channel and plug it into the 3rd channel. Now if we fiddle with the modes, you can hear immediately we get some crazy stuff going on right there. And if I take the synchronization out and set up the LFOs manually, okay, and maybe switch shape of some of the saw outputs, we get some crazy stuff going on right there. So we can get this kind of irregular, complex waveforms that are spitted out of each of the LFOs. And the funniest thing is that, you know, this LFO has a huge range. I mean, with the aid of the 4th divide mode, you can get as low as 28 hour cycles. Yes, you heard it correctly, 28 hours cycles, up to really fast audio range cycles that could serve as kind of a drone generators or some crude oscillation things, you know. So the possibilities are endless here, and in fact you're not only getting an LFO, and in this case 4 LFOs, but you are getting a cross between LFOs, between sound generator and a crazy modulation matrix right there. So to sum it up, it's really well designed, friendly, user-friendly, and last but not least, it's cheap. I mean, if you compare it to competition like Quad LFO by Modcam, it's half the price. And you know, if you compare the features, it could really compete with the top players right there. So for me, this is one of the best LFO modules out there in the Eurorack land. And well, what can I say? I highly recommend it. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.